What if I told you that Ferrari has forced Lewis Hamilton to give up everything that made him 7 times world champion, to copy Charles Leclerc? Why completely change your DNA as a pilot? The answer is more complex and dangerous than you imagine. However, this is not so simple. Lewis Hamilton has not only had to modify his technique, but has paused his identity as a pilot to merge with a philosophy that would have rejected for years. Instead of trying to impose his experience, he has accepted that the car cannot and should not change for him. And that, coming from a figure accustomed to having an entire structure at its service as it was in Mercedes, represents a transformation that touches the historical. This decision was not easy or fast. During the preseason tests and the first races, it became clear that their original style was not enough to get the best out of the SF25. Each tenth that Leclerc found in the curves, Hamilton lost her fighting a car he didn't understand. This act of transformation, unprecedented into a pilot with his record, represents the cornerstone of what Ferrari is building for the rest of the season. The convergence between Hamilton and Leclerc is not simply a tactical coincidence, but the result of a deliberate strategy, orchestrated from within Maranello, with the intention of unifying the extraction of performance under a single technical philosophy, a single identity, a single pilot language. It is a total commitment because if it fails, there is no plan B. And it is also a show of professional humility by a champion that, instead of demanding a car made to measure, he decided to become the tool that Ferrari needed. If there is something that has defined Ferrari's character in the 2025 season, it is not pure speed or strategic consistency, but the almost surgical difficulty that involves unlocking the true potential of the SF25. The car was born in Maranello is not indulgent. It does not allow errors. It is a car with a capricious personality, which demands a perfect symbiosis between the pilot and its dynamics to perform at the limit. And the most alarming thing is that, unlike the most versatile cars of the paddock, the SF25 seems to have been designed for a single way of being piloted correctly. It does not adapt to the pilot. The pilot must adapt to him. The core of this difficulty lies in its technical architecture. Specifically, the rear suspension with pull rod configuration, combined with an extended lower arm design, creates a load dynamic that shifts the balance of the car in full curve. In simple terms, the car induces surviving naturally, but does it inside an extremely narrow operational window. This means that if the pilot does not deliver exactly the correct type of input at the right time, either in the turn, braking, or progressive acceleration, the car becomes unpredictable. Do not forgive. Do not correct. And above all, he does not communicate. This technical feature has forced Ferrari to make drastic decisions in his configuration approach. The vertical stiffness of the rear axle is so high that it does not allow a progressive damping range as in other cars. Therefore, Maranello engineers have had to resort to extreme adjustment, alignment, and pressure on rear tires to stabilize the aerodynamic platform in high lateral high transfer phases. This implies that the car feels solid and effective only under very specific conditions, and that small track variations such as temperature, humidity, or type of asphalt can imbalance the entire set. For the car to work, the setup is not enough. A pilot who dominates the art of driving on the edge is needed. And this is where the convergence strategy with Leclerc enters. Because since Suzuka 2024, the Monegasco was the one who discovered this sweet point of the SF25. He learned to handle induced survival with a surgical delicacy, applying an asymmetric brake balance and using the accelerator lifting as a method to maintain the stability of the rear axle. That style, far from being aggressive in appearance, is actually a millimeter choreography where each pilot's gesture influences the general equilibrium of the car. Now, moving this style to Hamilton has been one of the most complex technical challenges that Ferrari has faced in recent years, because it is not a simple configuration transfer. It is a complete re-engineering of language between the car and the pilot. Hamilton, for 2 decades, perfected a completely opposite style. Its success was based on a fluid conduction with more linear weight transfers and a constant use of the middle phase of curve to stabilize the car. But the SF25 does not behave well under those conditions. If you drive it like a Mercedes, it becomes slow, unstable, and inaccurate. Ferrari asked Hamilton to leave everything he knew. That would leave behind the knowledge that led him to 7 world championships. Because with this car, that experience becomes a ballast. Instead, he had to adopt a new way of interpreting the car. One where the margin of error is millimeters and the car's feedback does not come in the form of progressive subviring, but of sudden lashes that punish the slightest detour. To this is added a very important psychological component. The SF25 does not give confidence. It does not build security on the pilot as a McLaren or a Mercedes would. Each lap is a struggle to find that thin line between maximum performance and total loss of control. Therefore, pilots who do not understand the language of the car tend to overact, to overcommit, which further aggravates problems. Hamilton, aware of this, decided to change his approach from the foundations. He didn't try to tame the car. He tried to understand it. And it is precisely that understanding, that new way of reading the behavior of the SF25, which is beginning to make a difference. Because if there is something that Ferrari has learned from this car, it is not enough to have talent or experience. Technical discipline, extreme sensitivity, and an almost inhuman adaptation capacity to survive in it are needed. The car is a precision tool, not a weapon. And if it is not used exactly as designed, it becomes a problem rather than a solution. The SF25 will not be the fastest car in all conditions, nor the most stable, but it is, perhaps, the most demanding. And for that, any pilot who manages to tame it becomes a fearsome contender. Ferrari knows. Hamilton knows it. And the rest of the paddock is beginning to realize. What Ferrari has done with Hamilton is not simply a technical adaptation. It is a declaration of principles. In an era where most teams seek to automate processes and simplify driving, Ferrari has opted for the riskiest path, demanding its star pilot a complete and deep transformation. And although until now the successful flashes have begun to shine, the big question that floats about the paddock is whether this has been a master play or a bet on the edge of the abyss. Because risk is not just that Hamilton fails. The real risk is that even if it is successful, the internal consequences can fracture harmony within the team. Ferrari has centralized its development in a single pilot philosophy, that of Leclerc. That has meant that all the evolutions of the car, all aerodynamic improvements, all balance adjustments, are aimed at maximizing a driving style. And that style, although Hamilton has learned to replicate, was never his. Ferrari's play also challenges the most sacred principle of modern engineering in Formula One: personalized optimization. Instead of creating a car that tolerates multiple driving styles, Ferrari has pushed its limits towards a unique, extreme, specific configuration. This decision is giving them results now, but what will happen when circuits with less favorable conditions arrive? What will happen if one of its pilots fails to adapt in real time to a car that does not forgive deviations? And this is where the bet becomes even more risky. Because if this strategy is not sustainable in the long term, if the SF25 loses competitiveness in certain paths, or if the internal conflicts scale, Ferrari will not have room for an alternative plan. They can't ask Hamilton to return to his traditional style, nor can they completely redesign the car in the middle of the season. It's all or nothing. They have played all their chips to a single formula, trusting that the fusion between Leclerc's talent and Hamilton's adaptability creates an unbeatable pair. At this point, the answer is not clear. What is evident is that we are facing one of the most ambitious experiments of modern Formula One. Never before a pilot of Hamilton's stature had been reprogrammed to function under the parameters of another pilot within the same structure. Never before had a team had opted for such an exclusive technical philosophy. And the most interesting thing is that the result of this play will not be measured only in points or podiums. It will be measured in legacy. If it works, Ferrari will have changed the rules of the game. If it fails, it will be remembered as one of the riskiest decisions, and possibly unnecessary, of its recent history. When observing everything Ferrari has built around Hamilton, one cannot avoid asking whether we are facing the beginning of a silent revolution or in the face of a monumental strategic error. What began as a simple technical decision has undressed deeper realities about how talent is managed, how cars are built, and how power is distributed within a Formula One team. Because what Hamilton has done goes beyond the track. He has accepted to stop being who was, at least momentarily, to try something new. And that has a huge weight in a sport where confidence in oneself is everything. What does it imply for a pilot who has won everything to have to learn to drive again? What is lost in the process? And what do you win if, in the end, that sacrifice becomes victory? Ferrari, meanwhile, has been put in a position that stripes the reckless. Not because your plan is technically wrong, but because the lack of a plan B is a double-edged sword. It all depends on the balance between Hamilton and Leclerc does not break, that the SF25 maintains its competitiveness under pressure, and that the equipment is able to sustain the tension without fragmenting from within. In modern Formula One, where politics weighs as much as performance, that is not easy. And now the question is open for you. After everything we have explored, do you think this radical transformation will make Ferrari the team to beat in 2025? Or are we seeing the beginning of a silent fracture that can explode in the hands when they wait for it? Leave me your opinion in the comments. Is this the smartest play that Ferrari has made in years, or a sample that they have lost course trying to control the uncontrollable? Do you think Hamilton, in the end, will overcome Leclerc using his own style against him? And how far this forced symbiosis can get before becoming unsustainable?